Okay, so this is part 2 of terrain association. In the previous video, we talked about basic map reading and kind of an introduction to terrain association. So once you've taken your map and you've oriented it to the directions of the streets, maybe a water tower, any of the features that you see around you, what we're going to do is there's 4 basic areas of terrain association that we're going to talk about that you can apply to any map, any directions, and we often do this without even knowing some of the terminology. So the first one is a handrail. A handrail is basically just that. Think of you're walking up the stairs, you're using a handrail on your left-hand side as you're walking up the stairs, helping you, guiding you up those stairs. And a handrail on a map is no different. So when you've oriented, what you often do is you use that handrail as an orientation. So when we talked before in the previous video about orienting yourself to a water tower in your town, or a ridge, or mountains, or a lake, you're essentially using that as a handrail. So when we use this on a trail, like as we're walking, we sometimes use these natural features as a handrail. So we know that we need to keep a ridge line on our left-hand side, and that will help us understand or kind of stay in the direction that we want to travel. Oftentimes rivers are used as handrails. You know, if you're walking up a river, you know that you want to keep that river on your left-hand side. So, you know, to use that example, we want to get to this courthouse again. If we're on 2nd Street driving, if we know that the river is on our left-hand side, we are going north. And so we're using that then as a handrail to move ourselves through. So we're not using a compass, we're not using anything, we know our relative orientation to our environment because we have this handrail. Similar to a handrail is what's called a baseline. And a baseline is used essentially for travel. And this could be a real line on the map. So this could be a real road or a trail or a river itself, or it could be something imaginary. So basically what we want to do is when we're using a baseline is we're using that as a means to travel on. So the example of a river as a baseline is we just stay on the river. You literally stay on the river as you're walking, and that's the path that you're traveling, the baseline that you're traveling on. A road is no different. When we use the example of an imaginary baseline, that's shooting an azimuth. If you remember from the previous video, azimuth is the way, is roughly translated from Arabic. That's the way in which we're going to travel. So it's a line that you put on the map that you're going to stay on, say if you're going cross country. That azimuth then becomes essentially your baseline of travel. Okay, the other simple one that we often use and maybe not know the terminology for is a backstop. So let's say we're going to use 2nd Street as our baseline for walking. That's going to be our trail or the road. Our handrail is going to be this river. Now in the directions, we're going to say if you get to, we're going to travel 2nd Street southeast north to the courthouse. Then we're going to go east on 1st Street to the courthouse. What we'll say is if we pass 4th Street, that's going to be our backstop. And if we pass 4th Street, we've gone too far. So we know as far as we need to go by 4th Street as an indicator. And that's what a backstop is. So let's say you're in this little park area here. All right, the backstop to the boundary of this park could be this stream right here. So you could say you need to head south to the park, to the river, and then from the river go east or west, and that'll get you to this bridge, for example. All right, so you're using the geographic features here to keep yourself oriented to know, okay, these are my boundaries, and this is the line in which I'm going to walk on, and this is the handrail in which I want to keep myself oriented to. All right. The last, and probably less commonly used, is what's called aiming off. And aiming off is essentially using the terrain to move around effectively or efficiently without the use of the compass to give you a higher level of precision. And so when you're aiming off, you know that when we're walking, we intentionally or unintentionally it's hard for us to walk a straight line. Sometimes it's because one leg is longer than the other, literally, and that can cause people to walk in circles. There's other instances of how our eyes align to things that we see as well that can create some parallax in which we aren't moving efficiently on a line. So sometimes, or if you're in a boat, wind will drift you. And in that case, then you're going to intentionally aim off so that you have some kind of reference to get back to where you need to go. So essentially what I'm going to say is you'll just walk to a particular backstop and then use that road then to get to your destination. So you're kind of intentionally going off course to use a baseline to regulate any of that natural drift, if that makes sense. So let's say you're in this park, you're heading north, you know that you need to get to 4th Street here. So you're heading through this park, you use 3rd Street as your backstop, and then you're going to turn left or head west to get to your destination. It doesn't matter where on that road you land. You just need to know that if you hang west, once you get to that road, that backstop, that's going to take you to your destination. Instead of trying to go straight to your destination across this park and then being off and missing, where you're going to be. So as long as you stay in that general area, using this road as a baseline, for example, or any feature, then you're not going to be precisely at that location, but you know exactly where you are in relation to everything else, is essentially what I'm trying to say. So that's train association. And again, we're going to go into train association in a little bit more detail and do it again when we talk about topographical maps. And we're going to talk about the feature of a topographical map, which this map doesn't have, which is interval. But before we do that, we should talk about compasses.